In the early days of May 1940, Europe stood at the edge of a storm whose violence few could fully comprehend. The armies of Nazi Germany, honed by years of preparation and driven by a doctrine of speed and shock, surged westward. In a campaign designed to break the resistance of the Low Countries and France in a matter of weeks. The world would come to know this method as Blitzkrieg, a lightning war intended to paralyze opponents before they could organize a coherent defense. In our familiar history, the Netherlands fell with alarming speed. German airborne forces seized key bridges and airfields, while mechanized columns pressed relentlessly across the flat Dutch landscape. Within days, the country's defenses began to crumble. The destruction of Rotterdam by aerial bombardment forced the Dutch government to confront an unbearable reality. Continued resistance would mean the devastation of their cities and the suffering of their civilian population. Yet history is often shaped not only by vast armies and sweeping strategies, but by moments of decision made under extreme pressure. In this alternate course of events, the city of Rotterdam becomes such a moment, one where resolve, circumstance, and preparation combined to alter the rhythm of a campaign that had seemed unstoppable. As German forces approached Rotterdam, Dutch commanders made a choice that diverged sharply from the calculations of reality. Rather than preparing the city for surrender under threat of bombardment, they ordered a comprehensive urban defense. Engineers moved swiftly through the streets, erecting barricades and demolishing key roadways. Bridges were wired for destruction, warehouses converted into defensive strongpoints, and canal crossings transformed into choke points designed to slow armored vehicles. Rotterdam, the great port of the Netherlands, became a fortress of brick, steel, and determination. German planners had expected resistance, but not of this intensity. Their strategy relied on speed, on the assumption that Dutch forces would collapse before concentrated pressure. Airborne units had already secured positions around the city, anticipating the rapid arrival of ground forces that would complete the encirclement. Instead, they found themselves drawn into a stubborn and confusing struggle within the city's industrial districts and narrow streets. Dutch defenders, familiar with every canal, warehouse, and alleyway, used the urban terrain to their advantage. Small units moved through hidden passages and improvised barricades, forcing German troops to advance slowly and cautiously. Bridges that had been expected to fall intact were instead destroyed in carefully timed demolitions, leaving advancing columns stalled on the outskirts of the city. Time, so essential to the German plan, began to slip away. Rotterdam's resistance did not halt the German war machine entirely. German forces still possessed overwhelming advantages in numbers, mobility, and air power, but urban warfare imposed a different tempo upon the campaign. Tanks that had raced across open countryside now faced blocked streets and collapsed infrastructure. Infantry units were required to clear buildings one by one, while engineers struggled to construct crossings over shattered canals. Every hour gained by the defenders forced German commanders to reconsider their timetable. The delay reverberated beyond the Netherlands. At this stage of the campaign, German High Command was executing a daring operational concept known as the Manstein Plan. The main thrust of the Wehrmacht was not intended to push directly through Belgium into northern France, where Allied forces expected the primary assault. Instead, German armored divisions were driving through the dense forests of the Ardennes, aiming to cross the Meuse River and break into the open plains beyond. The success of this maneuver depended on coordination and momentum across a wide front. The rapid collapse of Dutch resistance had been calculated as part of this delicate timing. It would secure the northern flank of the German advance and allow divisions tied down in the Netherlands to redeploy quickly toward the decisive battles unfolding in Belgium and northern France. Rotterdam's defiance disrupted that calculation. German commanders now faced a dilemma. To ignore the city would leave a fortified stronghold behind their advancing lines, threatening supply routes and communications, yet committing additional Forces to subdue Rotterdam meant diverting resources from the broader offensive that was unfolding with breathtaking speed elsewhere. Reluctantly, reinforcements were sent northward, for several crucial days. Elements of German armored and infantry divisions that might otherwise have raced toward the Belgian frontier found themselves entangled in the struggle for Rotterdam. Artillery was brought forward. Engineers labored to clear barricades, and commanders attempted to impose order upon the chaotic geography of urban combat. Meanwhile, the Allies were beginning to react to the unfolding invasion. French and British planners had anticipated a German advance through Belgium similar to that of the First World War. As German forces moved into Belgium, Allied armies surged forward to meet them. Executing what was known as the Dial Plan, their objective was to establish a defensive line along the Dial River, preventing German forces from sweeping rapidly into northern France. In real history, the speed of German operations allowed little time for reflection or adjustment. But the unexpected delay in the Netherlands produced subtle ripples throughout the Allied command structure. Reports began to arrive describing the stubborn resistance in Rotterdam. Intelligence officers noted that German progress there was slower than anticipated. Though these developments did not immediately alter Allied strategy, they introduced an element of uncertainty into German operational timing. And in war, uncertainty can be as significant as force. The delay at Rotterdam did not transform the entire strategic situation overnight. German armored columns were still pushing through the Ardennes, still preparing to cross the Meuse at critical points such as Sedan and Dinant, but the shifting tempo in the north forced German planners to adjust the allocation of units supporting the broader offensive. Divisions that had been scheduled for rapid redeployment were now tied to operations in the Netherlands. Supply lines were strained as logistical planners attempted to maintain the pace of multiple simultaneous offensives. The German war machine continued to move forward, but its rhythm had been disturbed. Within Rotterdam itself, the defenders understood that their position remained precarious. Ammunition was limited. Communication with the Dutch High Command was intermittent, and German pressure intensified with each passing day. Yet the psychological impact of their resistance was undeniable. Across the Netherlands, the knowledge that Rotterdam still held out inspired renewed determination among Dutch units that might otherwise have surrendered. Beyond the country's borders, observers in Britain and France watched with cautious interest. The Dutch army, though outmatched, had demonstrated that determined urban defense could slow even the most modern mechanized force. Every day that Rotterdam remained unconquered became another small fracture in the myth of unstoppable speed that surrounded the German advance. And so, amid the smoke of factories and the labyrinth of canals, a single city imposed its will upon the timetable of a continental war. Not through overwhelming strength, nor through grand strategy, but through the stubborn refusal to yield at the moment when surrender seemed inevitable. In that fragile delay, measured in hours, then days, lay the possibility that the great offensive sweeping across Western Europe might encounter resistance not only in numbers, but in time itself.
Thanks for watching. If you found this journey into alternate history fascinating,